Hello, Brunswick. Here we go. You're able to edit this then, I hope.
Yes, yeah.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hello, Brunswick Cycling Club. It's your usual COVID conversation. This time, I have turned the microphone on your president, Agostino Giramondo. Ag, your wife and Mike Frislie, they have conspired against you. We tried to set you up so you got no warning of this. How does it feel to be on the other side of the mic?
Well, you've got me, that's for sure. I don't know what it feels like yet. We might have to talk about that one at the end, but look, it's nice that Mike in particular, he's been so generous in his feedback, and most members have. So yeah, it's quite a thrill actually. I'm a bit nervous, to be honest, mate.
Well, Mike, as a guy who, a lot of his family is in the United States as opposed to in Australia, he's spoken about the strength of the club, the Brunswick Cycling Club, and giving him that sense of family, which is why Mike was so keen for me to interview you. So as feedback from Mike, how proud does that make you feel of the club?
Oh, really proud. I often say that me and the others on the committee and any past president, we've just got this tremendous honour of being custodians of this wonderful culture. And I think every person who's in a position of a committee member, etc., has got a responsibility to continue that and then add to that what they can. But yeah, I didn't think I'd be interviewed by Matt Keenan. That's a great honour.
But it's got an awesome history, the Brunswick Cycling Club. I never rode for the Brunswick Cycling Club. I always was a member of the Northcote Cycling Club. But my first ever race was a Thursday night at Northcote. And then that Sunday in 1990, November of 1990, I went to the Brunswick Clinic. And it was run by Alan Grindle, who is absolutely one of the stalwarts of your club. It was well established by that point. And I think Alan volunteered in the early 1980s for 6 weeks. Yep. And he did it for around about 25 years.
Yeah, that's usually how it works. It's like, I was going to be president for 2 years and I'm now into year 5. So I think that's what happens. But look, Alan, it's not unusual to see Alan just turn up to the clinic now and just, sit there almost incognito. And it takes people like me to point out who that guy is, Yeah. He's still very passionate about the club. And, as he gets on in age, he can't get out as much, but I took him to the CA Awards a couple of years ago, and it was just great to have him there. And, when we walk into our club rooms, we're full of history made by people like Alan Grindle. It's just fabulous. And because we've got this great venue, it's a place where the past and the present can meet. And success metric isn't a number of members you've got, because we've got hundreds of past Brunswick members who've got no reason really to be a member now. So I think our net is really, really big, and we have so many people who have contributed so much to the club. It's really amazing. And the more I've studied our history, the more I realise that the club has been quite an important club in the history of Australian cycling. The way it's agitated for change, and throughout history, it's really put itself out there as a progressive club.
Of all the clubs that I know reasonably well, it's the club that has that strongest sense of, I'm still a member of that club even after they've stopped riding. People they've moved to another club. Back in the days when it was the amateurs and the pros, a lot of riders from the Brunswick club would join Footscray, for example, but still see themselves as Brunswick people.
Yeah, absolutely. So someone like Tom Maloney, Tom.
Yeah, I know Tom well.
Is a stalwart for Footscray now, but he's always talking about Brunswick, and he's always sharing our posts and leaves a lot of comments. So it's people like that. You're right. It's a bit like AFL, where the good clubs, players may leave and go somewhere else, but they always feel part of that club where they contributed to that history. And it doesn't mean they don't to the other club they go to, because they're an important member of that club too. They never let go of the one. I guess we're not, in Tom's case, it'd be 2 lovers there, not 1. But it's, we're an important part of his life, which is really nice. And that's how you look at it.
Yeah, and on football, some people are silly enough to barrack for the Richmond Football Club.
Yeah, well, silly until about 4 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Now, I'm a little bit concerned. I'm trying to work out whether this is going to be a round table discussion or a square table discussion. Martin Bauer has warned me, one of your committee members, that your favourite saying is a quick meeting is a good meeting, and they normally end up around about 3 hours.
Yeah, that's not always my fault. You've got Cam on the committee too, and if Cam gets something he wants to say, it takes a while, but it's always valuable. but I am guilty of it. But I try and keep them in some sort of line. And the square table, round table thing, if you need an explanation.
I do.
Okay, so square table items. I learned this from Michael Miller, who's the CEO at News Corp now. And Michael's a great mentor. And he said, if you want to have a quick meeting, you have a bunch of square table items, and they are FYIs. They're things you sent out earlier in the week, and it's up to everyone who's attending the meeting to read those. And if they've got something they want to bring up, add it to the round table agenda, because we can discuss it. If not, it's not being discussed. Round table should be the 2 or 3 or 4 decisions that need to be made. And I figured that in a volunteer group like a committee of a sporting club, if you don't have that sort of system, you'll meet once a month and you'll talk and talk and talk, and you'll actually get nothing done. And I must admit, my first few meetings were like that, where it was great. It was a good chinwag, but we really didn't get to that point that we wanted to get to. So I thought I might introduce something a little bit more organised, and hasn't necessarily been a great success, but at least they talk about it.
Yeah. So you're busy with family commitments and work commitments as well, but how much of your time is taken up being the president of the Brunswick Cycling Club?
A lot. And so I've got a saying that it's better to wear out than rust out. And I guess I learned that from my father, who 4 weeks ago today passed away. And he, what he taught me was that there's 2 types of people: the ones that sit there and wait for others to do things, and the ones that do things. And I'm in the latter category. So when it comes to time, I don't know. I just spend a lot of time on it. Some people ask, how do you find the time? Because I do have a pretty busy day job. And I have to say, it hasn't been impacted by what I do for Brunswick. I just don't watch any reality TV, and I spend downtime just doing stuff for the club. I find that
you're better for the experience then, if you're not watching reality TV.
Much better.
I'm glad you've answered that one correctly, because your wife, Tonina, told me that you spend a fair bit of time working on the club.
Yeah, I do. And again, if you put your hand up, you have to. I just don't believe that you can just sit there and say, I'm on a committee of something. And, I'm on the marketing and development committee for Victorian Opera. I'm an advisor to a startup. And that's all great, because I meet new people. It gives you a new line of thinking. It's diverse thought. So yeah, but there is a bit of a trick to it, Matt. So I do put up a lot of posts, right? But people think those posts take a lot of time. They actually take a week sometimes to develop, and they're just 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. I've done it tonight, where I send off a draft to the committee. They give feedback, and it ends up looking like this beautiful long piece that you must have spent a lot of time on. It's really not the case. So you cheat a little bit, right? It's not. It's using everyone's resources.
You're giving away the secrets of working in the media. I think we're going to have to stop the conversation. Back to your father and passing away 4 weeks ago, a huge moment in your life, but his influence has clearly been a very positive one, and one for the rest of the community. You're living his mantra. And does that make you proud to know that your dad would be looking at you and going, yep, I've done well there?
Yeah. It does. It does make me feel proud. And and the other thing was gratitude, just yes, someone's passed away, but I was taught from a very young age to have gratitude. So, I'm grateful that he lived as long as he did, and I'm grateful that I was given the opportunities that my parents gave me, and I'm grateful that I was able to learn from some pretty bad mistakes, and, just grateful for everything. And I'm actually really grateful that, we moved to Sydney in 2011, which was meant to be for 5, 10, 15, maybe forever, when I was working at News. And it's there where my daughter took up cycling as a 6-year-old and got me back into the sport. So, I'm grateful for that. It was a big upheaval for us to move away and all that sort of thing. But, the way things work out, it's about putting yourself out there. And that's what I was taught. And that's what I hope, my kids and others that have worked with me and perhaps are influenced by me have that same mantra.
You've kind of led me down the path of one of the questions that somebody was asking that's on the committee. They wanted to know, when you did come back to Sydney, why did you choose Brunswick?
So basically it's because my cousin Connie Boff and Vanessa and Nathan and Paul, so Connie and I are very close, and I'm close to my cousin Ag as well. Connie and I are around the same age, so we're like brother and sister. And Ava was 10, 9, 10, and she'd just come out of a really good club in Sydney, LACC, the Lidcombe Auburn Cycling Club, and they had an all-girls program or an all-girls setup, and she really loved her cycling. So we needed an environment that was similar. And, I'm like you, I'd been a member of Idlo Australia when I was younger. So I wasn't really a traditional Brunswick member, but it was just a no-brainer, really. Because of my time in Sydney and getting back involved in the sport, I knew a lot of people from Brunswick already. So it was just really easy. And we moved back into our house in Regent, so it was close. And so, yeah, but really Connie's the one. Connie and Paul and Nathan and Vanessa, they're the ones that are responsible. And they continue to be a huge influence on me, actually, those people. I love them dearly.
Yeah, and they're a big influence on the club as well. Connie sent me a message about a memory that she has when she was about 14, and you and her rode together to go out to Campbellfield to watch your older cousin, Agostino Giramondo, race. Yeah,
that was a great memory, and we were followed in the car by my auntie Maria, who'd only just got her license, and we rode fast enough for her to not hit us, because we were a bit nervous about Zia. But no, that's a great memory. And I found a photo the other day when I was looking for photos of Dad, the one and only trophy I won as well, and that was at Campbellfield too. So I've got great memories of riding out there and just being a Giramondo on a bike. It was great, and that club had a lot of older members who just gave you great support and some great stories. Riders lighting up a cigarette at the end of a race and having big salami sandwiches. And
well, that's the other thing the Untitled Australia Club has always done so well. Mortadella rolls. You've got to get mortadella rolls down to Brunswick.
And you probably, I'm not the right person to speak to about that, because I'm kind of the most anti-Italian eater. I don't have olives. I don't have processed meat. I'll have salami if I have to on a pizza, but I eat it with a knife and fork. So I'm kind of, I shock everybody about that. I'm not a role model Italian eater.
We might have to cut the vowels off the end of your name.
maybe.
One of the Ivo Rigoni, one of the guys from the club, he spoke about your love for the NFL and the Green Bay Packers, and he thought it was really important that you like the Green Bay Packers because they're a team that's owned by the community, as opposed to one of the wealthy owners that we often see in American professional sport. Was that a big part of why you chose the Green Bay Packers? Yeah.
So Ivo's right, and it's amazing he remembers that. The only problem with being a Packers fan is that Laurie Norris is too, but I can deal with it. That's okay. Yeah, I know.
You can't win them
all. But with the Packers, I got into management really early in my career. So I started leading newspapers in the early 90s, and a few years down the track, I started to find myself managing people. So I actually looked around for leaders, and being a sports fan, I was intrigued by the NFL anyway, because back in those days you only saw it on a Monday night with Don Lane or a Thursday night. I think it was.
At Tuesday nights with Don Lane is why I fell in love with the Denver Broncos and John Elway.
Yeah, well, there you go. And for me it was Emmett Smith and these guys. They were just and I just loved them. But I love the game. I love the tactics of it. So when I started looking for leadership examples, the name Vince Lombardi came up.
Yeah.
And so I started to study Vince Lombardi. And, I look at Lombardi now and I don't think I'm going to learn too much from leadership because it was all about quotes. But as a young manager, it was really important. He had some great one-liners and he said winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. I mean, you just wouldn't use that today, right? But that was the sort of thing that you read. And from Lombardi, I got to understand the Packers. And then when I found out that the Packers were the only team that was owned by its members, and there's only 100,000 people that live in Green Bay, 100,000 members, and everyone's got a share. And it was the only team not in a major city. And I followed the Richmond Football Club, which has a very feral and passionate supporter base, and Leeds United in English football. To me, there were great similarities. So I just embraced the Packers. And then, 96, they won the Super Bowl with Brett Favre as quarterback, and I was hooked by then. And then, of course, with ESPN and Foxtel, etc., you can watch it every week. And we had another good win today, so we're 12-3. Could be number one seeds this season, the Packers. So they're looking very good.
So how much does that influence your thinking in terms of your role as the president?
A lot, because the community is critical, right? And again, things happen for a reason. So you follow this team and you see how they operate, and they don't make decisions based on how much money they're going to make. Yes, that's important, but they make it on, is our community going to benefit from this? Not so much are they going to agree, because you can't always get your community to agree with everything you want to do. But if their first thought is the community going to benefit from this, then that's something that I absolutely preach and practice. And we do that as a committee. But I think, again, that the good fortune for me is that I'm at a club that's always done that, always thought about its members, its community. We actually don't even talk about members anymore. We just talk about the community, because it is bigger than the membership. So definitely that. The other one is that they have managed to keep at bay any overtures to move away from Green Bay. They've never put a roof on their stadium, so they've foregone the role or the opportunity to host the Super Bowl, just so they can retain who they are. And so it's a really interesting story, and it's steeped in history and passion. They embrace their history, they love it, but they don't walk away from its imperfections. Like Curly Lambeau, who's the field's named after him. The guy ended up bringing the club to its knees, really, by the time he finished. But they still respect the time that he was there and the impact he had, and they forgive the last part of it, which is, I think, very important, because that can happen in a lot of clubs.
Yeah. On the topic of the stadium, you haven't put a roof on the Brunswick Velodrome, but you have developed a new club rooms, obviously with great support from the council. It's been a massive refurbishment, redevelopment of the club. It's one of the destination velodromes in Melbourne.
Yeah, we look. I personally am very lucky, being the president that came in when that was already built, and all I got to do was just be there for the ribbon cutting, so that was okay. But
you could be a politician then.
Yeah. Well, that's what I felt like, and I thought, hold on, I'm an imposter. I'm not the one that's done anything here. But it's Harry Hart, it's Alan Compte, it's Matt Ladner, Hamish Simons, people like that who did all the work, and they're still very connected with the club. But we are lucky, Matt, and we're the envy, perhaps not the envy in the way of, there's pure jealousy from other clubs, but we do get a lot of requests from other clubs about, how we did it, how do we get that support from our council, and where we can, we obviously assist as much as we can. But the Moreland Council have been terrific partners as well. They just get it, and we have this venue that isn't just used for us anymore. The community uses it, and I think that's the important part. And we're going to make a lot more use of it too in the future.
We've got rowers coming there now. Mercantile Rowing Club, which is one of the leading rowing clubs in the country. Their head coach is one of the awesome Foursome, Mike Mackay, and they're using your velodrome now, and there's a good integration between your club and theirs. Yeah,
there is. And, you used the word gratitude before. You introduced me to Mick, and we had a very brief chat, but productive chat about what they were trying to achieve, and it just made sense to us to have them use our facilities, and then in the future we use Mercantile as well. They have a gym there, etc. But the big picture was that you have two great clubs, two Melbourne clubs, and they can do a lot of things together. Yes, there's a crossover between rowing and cycling. You get that. They're both fairly aerobic sports, etc. But it's the opportunity to blend histories and share events and all that sort of thing. So obviously COVID's put a stop to that, but we'll extend on that next year. But the best story I've got about the rowers is that, and this says a lot about us and particularly Cam McFarlane. Mick said, we can train there. This is great. It sounds good. Oh, by the way, we've got road bikes. I went, okay, it should be okay, but I'll check. Cam's first response was, yeah, sure, we'll just put them on the other side. So we had a group on one side of the track and Cam with his motorbike on the other side. And we had Cam volunteered two mentors, Pat Robles and Oscar Moore, two of our older juniors, well, they're no longer juniors, who mentored the group. And within 4 weeks, the majority of those rowers on the road bikes were on track bikes. So it's a big lesson, and that's what we do at the club. Rather than the answer being, look, no, it's probably going to be dangerous, we would rather you go on your own. Oh no, we can do it. We'll just put you on the other side. And that says a lot about how we do things.
It says a lot about Cam as well. So just the people. All clubs are about people, right?
Yep.
Cam McFarlane and David Morgan.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with Dave. So Dave is a very open person. He, Dave always says it's not about him, yet he'll be so outgoing that it ends up becoming about him. But he actually
draws people in.
Yeah, he does.
He's wonderful.
He's an ambassador and a half. I mean, occasionally, early days, I'd have to call him up and say, Dave, did you really need to put that on a post? But he's, I mean, you just let Dave go because he just loves the club. He loves the club. He loves people, but he loves cycling, and he loves family. He loves connection, and he loves the kids. And, that whole family, the Morgan family, their dedication to the Sunday Clinic in particular, it's incredible. Like, it really is something else. And if you talk about giving honours and awards to people, that whole family deserves it. You got two young ladies, Kimberly and Jessica, who are no longer racing, yet are dedicated there. You've got Helen, who's in the canteen and is meticulous about that area. And you've got Dave, who's everything, right? He's the first person at a working bee. He's there at 6 a.m. He's there at 10 p.m. And he was the person we were most worried about during lockdown, because he misses the place so much. And, getting back on the track, to me personally, seeing Dave there, that's what a lot of us wanted to see, that man smiling again. Now, Cam, I've learned a lot of Cam. I didn't know how to take Cam the first time I met him, because unlike many others, I really didn't know Cam. We knew the same people, etc., and I knew of him, but I really didn't know Cam. And what I've learned from Cam are truly life lessons, like the way he has this wonderful ability to relate to someone. You might think he's this big joker, but he actually understands what you're going through, and he doesn't look at things through his lens. He tries really hard to walk in the shoes of the person that he's trying to mentor or talk to. And by doing that, he also gets the parents, on side and away from the action appropriately, so that they don't feel like they've been kept away. But he's a trustworthy person, and then when he needs to bring you in, he does. I've just seen him do some remarkable things with young people in particular, and he's just a ball of energy, and I just love him. I really do. He's an incredible person.
Yeah, they're both exceptional. One of the mantras that my father's often spoken about, I imagine your dad's probably been the same, that your life isn't measured by what you get, it's measured by what you give.
Totally. Another great saying, and one of my favourite songs is a song called "It's Not What You Got, It's What You Give." It's by an old American 80s heavy rock band, probably no one knows, called Tesla. But it's a great mantra, because you can have a lot of things, but if you don't give anything, and it goes back to that two types of people, right? The ones that sit there and go, well, someone else will do it, or the ones that do it. And often it's the people who've got the least time that go out and do things. But the reward is seeing people smile and be happy. And honestly, that's the greatest satisfaction out of all of this. Whether it's a little kid or a parent, or last week at Motor Pace, a young guy, I'd say I'm 52, so I call anyone in their 30s young, came in on his road bike. We put him on a track bike to try it out. I rode around with him on the duck board about 10 laps. Taught him what the flick of the elbow is and where you've got to come off. And then when the motorbike went past, we went around the track a bit higher and around the blue line. By the end of the session, he's sitting in the bunch on a wheel, comfortable as.
That's cool.
The smile on his face, he was so happy, and that to me is what it's all about.
So then throughout the COVID period, you started doing interviews with many of the riders from your club. What was the catalyst for that?
Connection. I am known to come up with ideas that I only thought of a minute ago, but I will think about it in my head, and I'll wonder if it can work. And I'm okay if something doesn't work either. It's like, okay, we tried it. But essentially, I thought it was around the time of the Zwift NRS stuff going on, and we had riders who were all over the place in their own garages, etc. And some were struggling, some had good technology, some didn't. And we had this period where Catalina and Sarah had been in Europe racing at the same event, the Omloop, I think, and then it all just fell apart. And I just thought, well, we should stay connected with these people. There's a lot of people who follow them. There's a lot of people who want to know how they're going. But more importantly, how do we make them feel, special, I guess? And that wasn't about making the riders feel special, but that we cared. And the feedback's been great, and they've been ongoing. And now they're a bit more spontaneous. Like something happens, James Anthony gets selected to go to a team in Italy. Let's get on Zoom and let's have a 10-minute chat. Sarah wins or come second in the esports, and we have a chat. And then she turned up the next day for a club ride. So it's changed a little bit, but essentially it's all about connection, mate.
Yeah. Well, on those Zwift rides, this one is from your daughter Ava, saying that you're really into the Zwift. But how many people have you yelled at on Zwift so far? And do you really think it makes a difference when people don't work turns on Zwift?
I reckon it does, yes. It makes a huge difference. You know that, it does.
Absolutely, it does. So you get a little bit energetic when you're on Zwift and somebody's sitting on, do you?
Yeah, well, it's, I do. And I have been known to scream at the screen.
Yeah, well, hey. I was at National Championships in 1996. I was in the breakaway, and there were 6 riders from the AIS, Eddie Salas and myself. And the neutral mechanic car comes up alongside me, and a phone comes out the window, big phone, 1996, and it was your cousin, Agostino Giramondo. He says, "Keno, just sit on." So you obviously don't take after your cousin.
No, I don't. And there is a difference, yeah. So the Zwift world for people like me is a big deal because I can't ever tell a story about being in any race of any significance where I could sit on. Yeah. My stories are around, C-grade crits at Coburg, being in a break for a few laps, thinking, "Oh, geez, I've got a chance here."
A win's a win.
That's about. I know, and I have been known to not so much blow up, perhaps like my cousin, but I did have a go at someone one day who started to ease off when we were in a break because he was in the red zone. Right. I wanted to understand what that meant when he looked okay to me. But that's another story.
Very good, very good. So you've done interviews with a lot of your young athletes, and you've got some amazing young riders at the club. Sarah Gigante, you've just mentioned, Luke Plapp as well. And one of the standouts this year, when she's had the chance to race, has been Ruby Roseman Gannon. You and I spoke the other day. I think Ruby's 19, you're 52, and you spoke about trading books. That's one of the unique things sport can do, bringing 2 people that in normal walk of life, you wouldn't come together in a forum where you'd go, "Actually, I've got a book you might be interested in."
Yeah, you're right. It's a wonderful thing about sport in general, and I guess in our sport, because you've got people who are not always in the team environment, they're moving around. They're not in the same bubble as say the AFL footballers were this year, etc. And I've enjoyed every interview I've done, but with Ruby, there was some interest that she had around, liberty, feminism, race, etc. And they're kind of subjects that I'm particularly fond of. And so the opportunity came to recommend a few books, etc. And I just think it's also important that that the riders know that we understand that they also have another life, and that's the interviews actually have been about talking, not just about cycling. What else is going on. And I learnt that, Matt, 10 years at Richmond Football Club emceeing functions 96 to 05. I had to prepare for interviews for 3 players at the end of every home game. So you've got 3 players that are rostered to come on. Now, if they lose, there's every chance one of those 3 won't turn up. Yep. Or there's every chance they'll turn up and not want to really talk about football. So you have to do your research and find out where they're from and their backgrounds, et cetera, and what they're doing. And I found that actually I did that as a default position, but that became the main topic of conversation because that's interesting. You've just watched the game and you know how they play, but you don't know about them. And I think it adds a human element to it. So when people have a say about someone's performance, they can just shut up and just understand that they're human beings.
But it can also, if you can bring something to them that disarms them. If you can ask a question early on in an interview with somebody and they have a moment or they even say, "How did you know that?" or "How did you find that out?" The barricade comes down and then you can have a more open and honest conversation. Because as you know, particularly football in Melbourne, the guard goes up because there's this sense that the media is out to attack them and they're looking to bring them undone at any little slip up.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I learned at Richmond, was that firstly the players were coming back and they were in a members environment, so they shouldn't expect to get analysed and assessed and
hostile
criticised.
questions.
Yeah, and so we had to make sure that was the environment, because it could have been perceived to be different. So the players would come in with their guard up, but once they understood that everyone here's a friend, and if we've had a big loss, everyone feels the loss. No one's here to take it out on you. And I used to say to the players all the time, you're not on AW. We're not going to ask you really hard hitting questions. It's okay. You'll get away with it here.
Yeah. So then for you, in terms of an assessment, what do you measure for success for the club? Not for you as the president, but what do you define as the club being successful and on the right path?
Yeah. So there's a few, and success metrics are hard to define, but they're certainly not membership numbers, right?
Why not?
Because, well, membership numbers are a good outcome. And the reason why they're not the main metric is because we've got to change as clubs, and we're starting to do that, but we've got to let our guard down, to use the same terminology we've been using. People see clubs as a place where I'll only join if I'm racing. So we need to let our guard down and say, we're a cycling club, not just a racing club. We're a cycling club that happens to have a pillar of racing. So the success metric is the connection you have with the community. So I look at it by, that's not just the number of followers, but the engagement we have with what we put up. The churn rate being lower in members, that's very important. And during COVID, we have kept our membership numbers at a certain level and now started to grow since November. And I think that's also got to do with the new packages, the Oz cycling packages. They're quite attractive, so that's worked. And we've left our club fees quite low. Here's an interesting metric for you. When Dan Knight called me and asked me if I'd be interested in an idea, and that is you coming along to Brunswick with Andy Gowers and Transport Minister as well, to Ben Carroll to do Amy's Grand Fondo virtual on the deck. Privately I went, yes. What I want is clubs or people to come to us when they've got an idea, rather than just say, well, they're a cycling club, so they'll only be interested in racing. So I said that is quite powerful. I had a meeting this afternoon with a soon-to-be announced partnership with a school, and it was all about, well, yes, they came to us because it made sense to come to us, because they see us as being inclusive and accepting of imperfections and wanting to bring everybody in. So very welcoming. So that's certainly a metric that's hard to measure, but you can tell by the inquiries you get. We get lots of inquiries every week, not just for membership, but would you like to do this? And we've got this thought, etc. Can we use a venue for this and that? So that's one. And the other one is it's the numbers we have at races. So we don't want to ignore racing. I love the fact that we've had the ISO Omnium that started at Blackburn, was at Brunswick, last week was at Coburg, and the final one's at Preston. 4 clubs get together to run this, and the number of riders from your club, it's kind of, you look at it and go, yeah, well, we've got one short, or we've got one more, a little bit competitive. But what I love with that is that they're almost all wearing Brunswick kits or Blackburn kits or Coburg kits or Preston kits. As a president, I just love that. I understand that people wear other kits because they've got sponsorship, etc. But it's those sort of club level races that people wear their club colours with pride. So that's another one. Our ability to win grants is pretty good. Our success rate's pretty good because we present a decent argument. And the junior clinic, signature event. So junior clinic and Thursday night motor pace, to me, are the two things that, if you had to just say, well, what's Brunswick? Cam on the motorbike on a Thursday night and 80 kids at the junior clinic. That's definitely a success metric.
One of the things we've spoken about a fair bit is the drop-off rate particularly for kids, when they get to the point and they think, well, I'm probably not going to make it as a cyclist. So they don't get a scholarship at a state institute or a national institute, or they don't make a state team. We need to somehow show people that it's a sport for life, and it's you know, just because you're not going to be a superstar, you're not going to ride the Tour or the Olympic Games, you don't have to stop. You had cycling early in your life, it went away for a while, and now it's come back. Cycling's been a part of my life for 30 years, and it's my connection, it's my community. I went away this weekend down to Anglesey with 4 guys that I don't see that often, but I first rode a bike race with them 30 years ago. That's what I've gotten out of cycling, as much as anything else that I've gotten out of it. It's those connections.
So I love that we have, I think we need to do a better job, but that we have a lot of under 19s and 23s who still ride a bike. You know, I look at kids like Angus Collins, you know, young Gus Vander, who had a nasty crash last week, you know, Lucia Azzopardi, Keely Bennett. They could have all given it away at the end of under 17s. One of the terms I really have a problem with is when we talk about junior careers. I just wonder what a junior career is. And it's often because we put this, and I say we collectively because it's our problem and we need to fix it, is that we put an emphasis on making a squad in under 17s because that's your gateway to that VIS or a team. And we don't ever talk about a plan B and or a plan C. And life is full of that. I understand the argument that, you know, elite athletes only have plan A because they can't focus on anything else, but you're not elite yet. But how do we know if somebody was going to make it? And Luke is a great example of that. And the Luke and Cam connection, you know, Luke had basically given up any desire to go further. And he's a kid, you know, Simon, his father, will talk about this, that if there were 9 kids picked in the state team, it would have been the 10th. He just never got picked. Sarah was the same, overlooked BIS, AIS, etc. And it's their love of the bike that's kept them in there. And I think the club's certainly contributed to that. So we've got to get better though. And this year, what we've done is we've encouraged some of our members who are now in their mid-20s. So, you know, Nick and Ben Abels, two great guys, brothers, have wanted to give back to the club for a while. So, you know, we invested in them in the level 1 coaching course, and now they've taken on NJTS and also training in general. And that's great because rather than lose people for 20 years and they come back when their kids take it up, we keep them in the sport. And, you know, Ben's not riding at the moment because he's got a shoulder injury, but he's contributing to the sport and he's got so much to give. And so we want to continue to help and to encourage people to think beyond, you know, you need to be in a team or you need to make it. Just enjoy riding the bike.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
I think as a sport, we need to work better at selling that participation side. It's, you know, you can get a lot out of cycling racing C grade or D grade club races.
Totally.
Because of the friendships that you build up. And it's, you know, there's the tiny little speck at the top of the, you know, pyramid that actually make a living out of it. And that's not what we should be drawing the kids in for to see stars. You know, the pathway, the conversation all the time about pathways, it's a pathway to having sport for life.
Yeah. Well, I'm amazed I didn't tell you about my dislike for the word pathway.
No, you know, I wasn't warned about that.
Yeah. I just think pathway means it's linear and that you've got to do this to get to that. And, you know, it's a, you know, we know that the road can take so many different turns and you might have to U-turn occasionally because you've gone down the wrong road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I club teams is so important for that. And, you know, that the organisations need to invest more in that. But earlier this year, we were in Ballarat for the team time trials and we had a ball. I can't even tell you where we finished. It was close to the back, that's for sure. And we blew up as soon as we got to the hill outside of the uni, and it was me who blew up. But we had 7 or 8 teams in there, and the fact that we finished in our club kit, it was just so much jubilation. And that's what I'm trying to encourage others to do, especially some of the newer members we've picked up, to say that's the event that you want to go in. And then every time we have a club teams events, we should go in them because they are actually the ones that make you realise why you're doing it, why you're riding a bike, you know.
So what do you want your legacy to be?
Well, just that, I know it sounds a bit like a cliche, but we just left the place in a bit better than when we got in, even though it wasn't broken. But I think the importance of maintaining who we are. So, you know, I've spent a lot of time studying our history and understanding it and getting to know people from all different eras. So, you know, if there's a legacy there, it's that same sort of commitment. But I think the fact that we've got a pump track that's about to be built in the infield and possibly, hopefully, a mountain bike skills park on the other side, that in 20 years' time, people are going to be grateful that there was a committee that had the vision to look at cycling much more holistically, and every school in the city of Moreland will have a bike ed program, etc. That's what I'd love the legacy to be, that if people look at a club from any sport, they look at the Brunswick Cycling Club and say, we actually want to do some of the things they're doing. They're pretty good.
I've got a couple of notes here that I think will make a big contribution to your legacy. One of them is from Ivo Rigoni. He sent me a message about not so long ago that he had an accident at home where life took a different turn for himself and his family. And once you became aware of the situation, you made regular contact with Andrew, his son, to see how he was going whilst he was in hospital and rehabilitation, and that you kept the Brunswick Cycling Club updated. And that's testament to your ability to build a sense of community. Because that as a president, that's not selling any other memberships, that's not winning you any medals at national championships. And it's not a pathway for junior development, but that's a legacy. Another one here, this is from David Morgan, and he suggests that your greatest asset is to ask questions or post statements with the first point of call to those that disagree to find out why. You want to be challenged. So if somebody disagrees, you're like, okay, well, let's see if I'm not seeing every angle of this story. And I think they're two pretty important legacies.
Oh, thank you. Look, on Evo's one of my greatest thrills was inviting him we had a Christmas party last year, it seems like years ago now, at the Manningham. Now, I would have been honoured to have Evo there, and he accepted, and he came with his family because he was in a bad way, and he's back on the boards now, and he's what the club's all about. People like that, So I'm rather flattered that he's remembered a few things. But Dave's point, I think, became obvious during the old cycling discussion, that let's have it ethically, let's have it with respect. If we're going to disagree, let's talk about what those disagreements are, and let's try and get a solution. Life isn't about it's my way because I've spent all this time on it and you're all wrong. It's, well, maybe I didn't see that. Let's have a discussion about it, and that's a very important thing. So, yeah, thanks. I'm happy for that legacy. Yeah. It's not bad, that one.
The complete opposite to the legacy that will be left by Donald Trump.
Well,
let's not talk about politics.
Let's talk about poor leadership.
Yeah. So, well, on that, and in terms of that legacy, and your father sadly passing away 4 weeks ago, but I, as a father, a lot of the things that I do, I look at it through the prism of how would my kids perceive this? What sort of role modeling am I leaving for you? So, what about you as a father? And obviously, Ava's heavily involved in cycling. What about you as a role model, as a dad, and the way you conduct yourself as the president? Because they can see that probably more than what they can see the way you work.
Yeah. So you're both a president and a parent. So there's certainly some responsibilities there. And I have blown up once, and I was very embarrassed about it, and I've never done it again as a parent. And I've used that to help mentor other parents, etc. But I guess you just lead by example. And by that, I mean, with Ava in particular, it's like, well, the reason why I'm doing this, or I've spent so much time on this, is because it means something to someone. And if we get this right, they'll be able to replicate it and use it, and you won't be relying on one person or one group to do it. So it becomes infectious. And I always say to her and my wife and my son that it's okay to smile. It doesn't cost any extra. And Ava will always say, why do you have to say hello to everybody? Well, I'll go, well, why not? So I think, and we get to that. We've been down to the track a few times during lockdown, and, Ava's always like, yep, I knew that was going to happen. I'll be talking to somebody about, the opportunities that they have using the track, and why don't you come down on this night and that night, etc. That's what you try and teach. Plus, also, you got to put yourself out to be vulnerable. You've got to understand that sometimes by encouraging an opinion, you're going to get slammed, and that's okay. But let's just be good human beings, hey? Let's just treat people with respect and with the opportunity to do something right. There aren't many people who are purely evil, right? Most people just need a chance. And I've seen this over many years managing people where I was always the one to happily take on that rep who was a troublesome rep. And when you work it out, firstly, they weren't, but they were because the environment they were in was a poor one. Behaviours were poor. There was no encouragement. There was no support. So add that support, and people are wonderful. They do incredible things, and don't ever expect anything in return. And then you'll be happy. If you don't expect a thing in return, you'll be okay.
Well, Ag, I think I can speak on behalf of everybody at the Brunswick Cycling Club. You're doing an exceptional job as the president. Likewise, as a parent, and the role modelling that you're providing for your kids is exceptional. And that flows on through the club. The amount of messages I got from people, just with statements as opposed to questions to pass on to you, that's testament to how much love there is for you at the Brunswick Cycling Club. And that role modelling that you're setting for your kids, people like Mike Frislie are seeing that, Ruby Roseman, Gannon, Luke Plapp, all those young kids that you mentioned as well, Sarah Gigante, they're all seeing that. You're going to have an enormous legacy when you finally do finish as the president. I've loved having a chat with you. And obviously, you know my number when you need somebody to come down for a virtual Zwift ride at Brunswick.
I do. And thank you. It's all about it's all about love, really. And this is not a job. You do that during the day. This is all about love. And I do appreciate everyone setting me up for this, Mike in particular. Can I just say a quick story about Mike? So Mike is Mike's very. I consider Mike very intellectual, right? He's got diverse opinions on things, and he's the one who actually taught me about looking out for people, because he keeps an eye on races everywhere. And I would, early days. So I'm a serial poster now, I guess, because I want to keep people up to date. But it's people like Mike, especially Mike, who would always just send me a note, by the way, so-and-so did something over there. And I just learned that he followed all these things, and that's it's a bit of a trick as well, that, but it's Mike who, instead of leaving a message on a public post, he just sends you a private message. And that's different, because when you leave a message on a private post to make a point, you're doing that for some sort of recognition. When you send something direct, it's because you care.
Yeah. I could not agree more. But on this note, we're going to finish on this note. Brunswick members, no private messages, public messages only on the bottom of this interview, your favourite Ag moment. And there is no response from you, Ag. You have to let it roll. Deal?
So I'm posting my own interview. Is that right?
You're posting it. Brunswick members are commenting. Right.
Okay. All right. That'll be fun.
Awesome. Right. Mate, I've loved having a chat. I'll see you at the velodrome soon.
Mate, thanks so much, Matt. That's been awesome. Thank you.